Want to know how retirement planning is changing in 2021? Go to doretirementright.com to download the new resource I've created. Now, on with the show. I just realized the other day that the Retirement Answer Man show is turning 7 years old next month. It's incredible. We've really tried hard to make sure the show has always been about you rocking retirement. So help us keep it about you by completing our listener survey in this week's Six Shot Saturday. Welcome to the show. My name is Roger Whitney. I am your host. So here we are in week 2 of this month-long series on staying healthy and fit in retirement. Seriously, if you're going to rock retirement, you have to have the tool to do it, and that's your body fine-tuned. That means always having mobility.
Huh? What does that mean?
Mobility. What do we mean by that? Well, that's having healthy muscles, bones, and joints so you can freely move about to perform all the typical things you have to do, but also so you can enjoy all your favorite hobbies, all those go-go years. Mobility is about having the vessel, the tool, which is your body, to carry you across this crazy world and throw your grandkids in the air and roll around with your spouse in the grass and whatever it is you like to do. You got to be able to do it by keeping a healthy body. Now, when we say you have to have mobility, that is a little bit different than what we've thought of in the past when we've thought of being healthy and fit. Because as we've aged, it's become about mobility. But back in the day when we were teenagers or in 20 years old, it was how I looked in the mirror. You know, how do I look in that muscle shirt? All those types of things. We're much more practical now because we're older and we're wiser, and it's about mobility. So in our main segment, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to bring on one of my favorite people, Tanya Nichols from Align Financial, to answer some of your questions. So one of the books I was going to recommend to you this week was a book called Younger Next Year. We'll have a link to it in Six Shot Saturday. It's a wonderful book. They have a female edition, a male edition, talking about how to really have a lot of mobility and a body that can support you in living out all these crazy things that you want to do. So we'll have a link to that in the show notes, but we're also going to have a link to a study guide, a summary of the book that we created in the Rock Retirement Club. That's our online community, and we have Rock Retirement University where you can create your own retirement plan. We created this summary in the club because what we do every quarter is we do a book study. So, we just started a 3-week book study on Younger Next Year. In our first session just the other day, we had over 50 people talking about their journey to being healthy. So I want to share this guide with you to give you an idea of what we create in the club to help people really rock retirement. So look for that in Six Shot Saturday, which is our weekly email. And if you don't get that, you can go to rogerwhitney.com and you can sign up for our weekly email and get all the updates on the show and these special resources. Now let's go talk a little bit about how to keep our body mobile. In the book, Younger Next Year, the authors make the argument that you should make health and fitness your job in retirement, your number one job. It's an interesting argument, and we had a discussion about it in one of the book study sessions in the Rock Retirement Club. And as we talked about it, it really started to make sense. What are some of the holdups or challenges that people have when they retire? Think about it. Think about whether you're retired now, what were some of the challenges, or maybe you're facing retirement. What are some of the things you're a little worried about or wondering about? A lot of times it has to do with not just the money. Will I be able to live the life that I want? But it's the other non-financial things of you're used to the structure of your career. Although it's getting old and you're about done for it, it's very familiar. You go to the office, or maybe you work remotely. You have the same rhythm of meetings. It gives you structure to your day. You know when you're supposed to do stuff. That goes away in retirement. And sometimes that can be very scary. Well, exercise and health gives you structure in terms of workout routines and planning. At work, you have lots of projects you're working on. You have goals and rewards if you hit certain bogeys and you get bonuses. That's very affirming to see progress and feel like I did that. Well, in health and exercise, in addition to the structure, you have rewards. You have how you feel, how you look in the mirror. You have goals. I want to lose this much weight. I want to lift this much weight or run this fast or what have you. And the other thing that exercise has that work gives you is measurable results. You can actually have some control over your project, just like at work. It gives you socialization, whether you're going to the gym or you're taking part in a spin class or a group cycling ride. It gives you an ability to connect and work with other people. And if you're married, making exercise your job gives you a coworker, because then it becomes your job together, which will lead to socialization and building that social network out there. So you can see how making exercise and health your job in retirement will give you structure. It's going to give you goals and rewards. It's going to give you measurable results, socialization. If you're married, something to work on with your partner, and all of those things are going to give you an identity. You're going to be an athlete, a healthy person, a cyclist, a swimmer, whatever it is that you do for fun. And in retirement, it's like the first time that you can really make this really important job the center of your life, rather than trying to fit in that 20 minutes on the exercise bike before you drive to work or before you get home and interrupting all the other busyness that you have. And so they make the comment in the book, and we were talking about it in the club, and we really expanded upon it, of how this really does kill two birds with one stone. One is being healthy in retirement, but two is giving you a structure to replace all those things that you're going to lose from work, at least to give you some rhythm so you don't just fall apart or lose rhythm after retirement. So I think it's something to think about. Now, in order to rock retirement, we need to be mobile. So we talked about mobility and how it's the ability to do the things that you love. It's not about muscles or crazy yoga poses and all that. It's really about maintaining your engine, your body, because if you don't move it, it's going to rust. It's about functional health. And our bodies definitely operate under a principle of use it or lose it. And as we age, our body has a natural cycle that it starts to go into that we can combat if we're intentional about our health. Now, it's really important to understand. I consider myself a casual athlete. I've done research on nutrition and training through a lot of the racing I used to do, but I am not an expert. It's not what I do. I'm a financial planner talking with you. So this is my understanding of it. But the key here is I want to highlight some things for you so you can start your journey on being healthier in retirement. And that means going to perhaps nutritionists, to your doctor, to trainers, to put together a program that you can do that's right for you. And it's important because as our body ages, we lose some things. We lose strength, and it's a natural progression if we don't battle it. Harvard Medical School says that we lose about 3 to 5% of our muscle mass per decade after age 30. So by the time we're 75 years old, it's easy to have lost 50% of your total muscle mass. That's an issue when we're growing older. And this is something that we can actually battle against, because fortunately, aged muscle is still very plastic and can respond to something called anabolic stimuli by increasing its mass and strength. So this is not an irreparable situation. And it's something that we can actually work to maintain and build rather than lose through anabolic stimulation, which is basically strength training. Now, they say the top things that contribute to losing muscle mass seems to be pretty obvious. Sedentary lifestyle, just not moving. Unbalanced diet. We'll get to that next week. Inflammation, which is related to diet and other things. We'll get to that next week. And severe stress. So if these are the top things that contribute to losing muscle mass, those are the things that we need to battle against. We need to not be sedentary. We need to have a balanced diet. We need to think about and try to treat inflammation, and we need to manage stress. So we can build muscle through strength training programs. So muscle mass is one thing that we're going to want to focus on as we get older, is making sure that we're maintaining or even building muscle mass, because that's going to give the body an important tool it needs to be healthy in those go-go years. Now, how you do that, I'm going to give some tools and some places you can go to get researched information on building muscle mass and workout programs and all of that. I just want to highlight how important it is to focus on strength training as you get older. And this includes the guys and the gals, because that's going to give you the ability to do things, right? Now, in addition to that, if we need strength for mobility, the other thing we need for mobility is flexibility. Flexibility declines because the muscles get stiffer. And if you don't maintain flexibility, what happens is your muscles shorten. And that's a problem as you get older, because if you start to lose muscle mass and your muscles are shortening and getting less flexible, your range of motion is going to be reduced. You're going to have more issues with joint injuries. You're going to have back pain. Your balance is going to be at risk. So you're going to increase your risk of falling. It's going to hurt your posture. If you have declining muscle mass and decreased flexibility, you're going to become less mobile, less able to do the things you want to do. And even more importantly, if it increases your risk to injury, this lack of strength and lack of flexibility, when you do get injured as you age, your recovery time is going to be much longer. Remember, I went to the doctor. I had my last knee surgery maybe 3-4 years ago. I had what was called a bucket handle tear of my meniscus. They went in there and cleaned it up. And the doctor had told me that this was really easy because you were so healthy from a weight standpoint, muscular standpoint, flexibility standpoint. It allowed the doctor to fix the issue, and my recovery was very quick because of these things. Now, one thing I'm not going to talk a lot about here, which is important, is heart health, which is not anabolic stimuli, but aerobic stimuli, which is getting your heart rate up and managing your heart zones through exercise as well. Because a perfect workout program, whatever that is going to include elements of strength training, flexibility, as well as aerobic training, getting your heart muscle strong. And all of these things will keep your body moving and will battle this natural degradation as we age. So as you begin your job of taking care of your physical health, especially when you're working out, have you ever gone to the gym after a long time off and you go lift some weights and you come home and your muscles, you can't even straighten your arm because you stressed it so much? Pressure is the key to being physically healthy in retirement, really in any time. Pressure is a very important thing. Stress, we'll call it stress, pressure, stress, is a very important thing to have up to a point. The key is you want to manage how much stress you put your muscles under, you put your heart under, you put your tendons under. You have too little, not enough stress on your muscles or your heart, things atrophy. If you put too much, you're going to burn out and have injury. And it's very easy once you make this your job, just like a job at work, you get gung-ho about it. You'll have to learn the rhythm of how not to have too little pressure. So you see the people at the gym and you know they're not really getting a workout. I guess they're moving, but there's no pressure to their muscles or to their heart because they're playing a game on their phone while they're hardly walking on the treadmill, right? That's way too little. Don't want to be those people. And you don't want to be the other people that look like their veins are about to pop out of their head, or they have way too much weight and too much pressure on their muscles or their heart than they really need. And in the book Younger Next Year, which we've been talking about a lot, so I would definitely suggest that you pick it up. You can do that with heart rate monitors. You can do this with a trainer. And if you've not exercised before, this is something you'll understand. But the key is that you have to find your sweet spot. So you're constantly applying pressure to grow your strength, your muscles, to keep the flexibility, but not too much so you don't get injured. Ultimately, the workout should never feel easy. It's one of those things where in all the years of training that I've done, because as you improve, you just keep upping the pressure a little bit. So it never gets to where, oh, I got this. This is easy. No worries. So what are some tools that you can use to start this journey on being physically healthy, this job, or maybe some tools you can use to dial in the exercise regimen that you already have? Well, I think Younger Next Year, the book, is a great book. And again, we're going to share the study guide that we're using in the Rock Retirement Club in 6 Shot Saturday. It's one that my team and I created. So I think that's definitely a book you should use. Strava, which is generally a cycling app. It's an app on your phone where you can measure your workouts. And the nice thing about that is it has a social aspect to it. So we actually are creating a Rock Retirement Club team on Strava so we can track and give each other kudos and comments on each other's workouts. The Peloton app, which I use, is wonderful. I have a Peloton bike and I use it probably 5 or 6 times a week. And it doesn't just have the cycling workouts because I have the bike, but I do yoga, I do strength training. It has some meditation courses. I really enjoy the app. It costs money. Fitbit Coach. Fitbits are, they start out as pedometers, but now they have a whole app with workout regimens and coaches. And these classes, especially during the pandemic, can really keep you engaged. I know the Peloton app I love. It's a little cheesy for me, but I can get into the motivational speech of, what's his name? What's the coach at Cody? Cody's like my coach on Peloton. Apple Fitness Plus. I think Apple came out with a similar thing to Peloton's app where relatively inexpensive. It's like $80 a year. There's a whole library of classes that you can take and just stream them on your computer. And you can do all these workouts at home. One of the members in the club during our last meetup was telling us about the Daily Burn app. He had lost a significant amount of weight, and he said he used the Daily Burn app, and it was really powerful. So that's one to check out as well. And then one important tool that has helped me a lot is the tool of just starting. I go through these mental conversations in my head. I work out in the afternoon, so I'm not one that works out early in the morning. The struggle with working out in the afternoon is my wife's downstairs. I haven't seen her in a while. I'm tired. I haven't really eaten as much as I should. I have this conversation that constantly is talking me out of working out. And it's a pretty powerful voice. It has very evolved arguments. And so what I do is I'm just going to go do it for a minute or two. I just go do something for 2 minutes. Go for a walk for 2 minutes. Get on your Peloton bike for 2 minutes. Start the class on your Apple Fitness app and just say, I'm just going to do 2 minutes of it and walk away. And the reason that's so powerful is because 2 minutes is easily doable. It's a small commitment. And the other thing is, once you do 2 minutes and you're already moving, you start to have I'm already moving and this doesn't feel too bad. I'll do another 2 minutes. And then you end up doing a lot more than you ever expected. Where I learned this from, and I forget the gentleman's name, but it was like it was on cassette tape. So this is how old this was. It was about, he used the analogy of how do you quit smoking? Well, part of his strategy was you set these little goals. I'm just going to go to the top of the hour without a cigarette. I'm just going to go to the bottom of the hour without a cigarette. These really small, short distance sprints, just get to there. Because sometimes we think so big that our inner voice can say, opt out. So just do it for 2 minutes, whatever it is that you're going to do. So next week, we're going to dive into probably one of the most important things in being healthy in retirement. And I'll share my journey on this, which I've just started here recently. And that is nutrition. So if you got them, go ahead and eat them because you're going to feel guilty after next week for whatever it is that you're eating. With that, let's go answer some of your questions. I am excited because we have the amazing Tanya Nichols from Align Financial. Hey, Tanya.
Hi, Roger.
I'm really good at coming up with nicknames for people, and I haven't found my nickname for you yet. We have Rockstar Nicole Mills. Tracy Austin is Mrs. T. Our newest member, Kim, is Kim Possible.
Love it.
Nothing's really settled with you. Do you have a nickname that we don't know about?
No.
Terrible Tanya is a bad one. I don't know that side of you. So we're not going to do that one.
Yeah, I don't think I have a nickname. The latest thing at my house about names is my adult stepdaughter is having a baby. And so we're kind of joking because I'm young and we're joking about whether or not I should be called grandma. And as far as I'm concerned, as long as I get to hang out with this cute little baby more than everybody else, I don't care what the kid calls me. So we're working on names for me in that front too. Because if you Google the different grandma names, there is a lot.
It's an important choice nowadays. Mima.
Right.
You're going to be a grandparent before I am.
Crazy.
So we're talking about health and being fit in retirement. And this week we've been talking about mobility. Because I'm going to talk about people your age and you are under 40.
Mm-hmm.
I remember being under 40 way a long time ago, and it was much more about obviously how you felt and all that stuff, but how you looked in the mirror and all that other stuff. You are very intentional about exercising. So why do you exercise so much?
It really keeps me sane.
So
I think it started, absolutely, hands down mental. On the days that I don't exercise, by the time kids are in bed, I can actually feel the difference. I can feel the anxiety kind of just like rising up in me, and I have to really think twice before I make any comments at home to my partner or my children, because it's definitely not their fault that I'm feeling irritable. It's because I didn't work out. So for me, it really is mental. I love the way I feel afterwards. I always have lots of energy. Just starts my day right.
Okay.
What about you?
It's always been mental health exercise and accomplishment. I'm competitive mainly with myself. I'm not really competitive with others, but I'm competitive with myself. But it's definitely been a important mental tool for me. And I think that's the same for everybody. All right, I just wanted to check because you're a CrossFitter. I was CrossFitter until you injured, and then it becomes about just being mobile.
Right.
So we have some questions. The first one comes from Lauren. Hey, Lauren. She says she has a 401k from her former employer that is split between Roth and traditional. And she says she's allowed to roll over just the Roth portion into a Roth IRA and leave the traditional in the 401k. She wants to know if she can just do part of it. How does the custodian determine which part is Roth, which part is traditional? Now, my first question on this one, Tanya and Lauren, is why do you just want to move part of it? Why are you not doing a traditional IRA and Roth IRA? I'm not quite sure the reasons there.
Unless she maybe wants to do a backdoor Roth.
That could be.
Sort.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. It's important if you're going to do a backdoor Roth that you not have traditional IRA assets. But I think the answer to the question, and Tanya, maybe you can fill in if I don't get this right. The way you keep track of what are the portions is really done by the plan administrator. So there's an administrator of the plan, is like the bookkeeper of the plan that knows what portion is which. And if you have a mix of traditional 401k assets and Roth 401k assets, sometimes they show very clearly on your statement, but not always. So my suggestion would be is either to go to the plan document, which is a summary plan description, which they're required to give out, or call the 401k administrator, which is not necessarily the HR department. It's likely going to be a phone number that's listed on whatever website you log into, and just ask these questions, because 401ks, each one's established a little bit differently in how these choices are. So that would be my suggestion. Did I get that right, Tanya?
That makes sense to me. I do think the way they list Roth IRAs or the Roth component is somewhat hidden sometimes in a statement. And I've had clients retire and we didn't even realize they had a Roth component in there because they weren't longtime clients. So I think it's likely somewhere buried in your website. If you keep clicking through, you'll probably see a breakdown in those values somewhere, or calling whichever company is holding your account. I agree with that.
Yeah. And another thing I just thought of, why you would want to roll the Roth portion out and just keep the pre-tax there is oftentimes when you choose an allocation in your 401k, it's a macro. It goes through all the buckets. And if we're going to build a pie cake structure of having different allocations for different time segmentations, you may want your Roth to be super aggressive, but your pre-tax dollars to be more moderate. And 401ks a lot of times won't let you do that.
Mm-hmm.
And what made me think of that, Tanya, is you were asking me a question before the show. I was talking about this pie cake allocation structure, and you said that I said January of 2000, and the podcast wasn't around in 2000. It was actually January of 2020. So whoever I gave that suggestion to, you won't find the 2000 episode, but if you go to late January 2020, you'll hear about that pie cake structure. So thank you, Tanya.
You're welcome.
All right.
I also wanted to add for Lauren, I have seen most of the forms that you have to fill out in order to complete the rollover of the Roth 401k or traditional 401k to your personal IRA. Most of the employer forms will ask you which one. So I think you can leave your traditional 401k behind and only move out the Roth if that's your choice.
Great. Now we have a next question from Charlotte. Do you want to read that one?
Sure. Okay. So Charlotte has listened to the podcast for about a year. She's learned a lot. She wants to retire in 2 years and she's working on her pie cake. She's been introduced to multi-year guaranteed annuities. She calls them MYGAs. I think that's what it stands for.
Yeah, MYGAs.
Yes. And they seem to be a good place to park her 1 to 5 year cash needs. She invested a couple of weeks ago in a 3-year and she was able to get 3%, a 5-year at 3.8%. Will you please address the pros and cons of multi-year guaranteed annuities?
We used to call these fixed annuities. Now they have a fancier name for them, I guess.
I had to Google it.
Yeah.
I did, because that's all I know them as is fixed annuities or immediate annuities or variable or indexed.
Yeah.
And so this was new to me.
Now, have you used MYGAs or fixed annuities at all?
I have in the past, but not as a core part of my retirement income strategy.
I actually just went through this conversation today. So maybe this will help Charlotte. The pros of a MYGA, if it's money that you want to keep super safe, that you have a time horizon, let's call it 3 years. And that's a great rate for 3 years, by the way. Traditionally, when we're building our pie cake, we would build a bond ladder where money is maturing when we need it in order to spend it. And because of the wacky world we live in, bonds, a 3-year high quality corporate bond is yielding probably less than a CD. So here's how I explained it, Tanya, and I'm open to your thoughts on this. So the way I phrased it to a client, because I don't have my insurance license, I don't sell annuities, and then we're always looking for good places to have cash. And I may get these numbers a little bit wrong, but I had a situation where we had $100,000 that we knew the client needed in 3 years in their income floor or their bucket. So we knew we had at least a 3-year time frame. They needed at the end of 3 years. And they were earning about 55 basis points or about 0.5% in a money market. And that pays about $500 a year times 3. And the choice was to do that or buy a 3-year MYGA or guaranteed annuity, which was yielding 2.5% was the last one I saw. And the difference was they would end up making about $5,000 more in interest by doing the MYGA. And so that's the way I framed it with the client. And I was discussing the pros and the cons. And the pro was 5Gs, right? For holding on to it for 3 years. And then so the cons are it has the A word, right? It's an annuity, which we all have been told annuities are bad because of all the bells and whistles, fees, and they don't really do what they think you're going to do, and you're locked in forever and everything else. So it has the A word, which earns its reputation justifiably in a lot of cases. And the way I tried to explain the MYGA was, this is as clean and organic as you can get. You give the money, in this case, the $100,000 to the insurance company. They say, hey, I will pay you 2.5% for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, you can renew or get your money back. And whatever fees are involved, they're baked into the yield that they're giving you, much like the fee on a CD. There is a fee, you just don't see it because it's baked in. And the other negative to it is the hassle and the confusion. So it complicates it because you got to fill out literally an annuity contract and the money has to be sent someplace and you don't really see it in your account. So it's complicated. And so I think the question for everybody, like I posed to this client, was, is it worth $5,000 to go through this extra complication initially and then having the annoyance over 3 years of having it be a little different? I think that's really the question.
Well, the other question that comes to mind for me is, in the year you need the 100,000, isn't that $5,000 going to be taxable all in that 1 year? And then does that come into the equation for how to calculate how much extra benefit it really is?
That's a very good point. That's a very good point because it's tax deferred, right? Mm-hmm. In between. So rather than pay tax on the interest every year, you're going to pay tax all in 1 year. My guess is it depends on what your other income is in that year and whether there's enough zeros to really make a material difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I have been using them more and more. for the purpose like we're talking about. But I sort of pose it. It's amazing to see Tanya and Charlotte, everybody, other clients, oh yeah, I'll do that. No problem at all. They actually calculate, well, if it costs me 8 hours of time, that's not bad, 8-hour hourly rate. And I have other clients, they just want simplicity and they don't care about picking up those a little extra dollars.
Right. And the other thing that I always think about when I think about annuities, especially if you're doing them kind of on your own, is the 3 years really 3 years? And is the 5 years really 5 years? Because sometimes the rate itself might be fixed for the 3 years, but the contract might go 5 years or maybe even 7 years, maybe even longer. So that means if you're in the surrender period, you can't draw the money out more than maybe sometimes only 10% of the account. So that's something to watch out for too, to make sure you're clear about what the surrender period is. Unless, is there something special about these MIGAs nowadays that they don't have surrender charges any longer?
No, generally the surrender charge is to the fixed period. But you make an excellent point, because where you will get burned on these potentially is if you have to get the money out outside of that, what they call a surrender period, right? Is what you're referring to. And then that's where they'll really get you.
Right.
So read the contracts.
And if you're doing it early in retirement, oftentimes I'll suggest to people, don't do anything that locks you up. There's so many big decisions already at the front side of retirement, like turning off one of your most valuable assets, which is your ability to earn income. That's like a permanent enough decision to some degree, that some of these others that are more, 3 years isn't that permanent, but some of these others, like, does it make sense to make these more permanent decisions early in retirement when you don't necessarily know exactly what you're going to do the first few years? Who knows? Maybe you want to buy a motorhome in year 2 and you need the 100,000.
That's a very good point. You want to be very agile early on, so you have some flexibility.
Right.
Right. So our next question, I'm always surprised by this, Tanya. One of the most common questions we get.
Can I go back one more time on that?
No,
one?
we finished that stuff. No, it isn't.
I can't help myself. The other thing that I thought of, I'm assuming that she's old enough, Charlotte. I'm assuming you're over 59 and a half.
Yes.
But the other thing about annuities that can get you caught up is you can't distribute from them. You can't take your money back if you are under 59 and a half without paying 10% penalty. So that's something else to pay attention to.
Yeah. The assumption is it's going to be over 59 and a half. And this is where all those complications come from. You could easily say, oh, it's not worth the effort. I'll forget the $5,000. I'm just going to keep simple. The more we complicate things, the more difficult we make it sometimes. Thanks for pointing that out.
No, I'm done. I promise.
Yeah. Oh, no, you're going to think of, because you're so smart, you're going to be continuing to think of a lot of things. So the next question, this is one of the most often questions we get, is the pension decision. And I think, Tanya, a lot of that reason is because this is a permanent decision. Right? You can't undo this one. And so Guy asks, his wife has a pension, UPS, and it's frozen. And if she retires, they're hoping for a lump sum option rather than taking the pension payment. So essentially what you get in pension plans, not all of them give it to you. Not all of them give you the option. They can say, you retire and we will pay you, let's say, $60,000 a year, or we'll just give you $1 million, right? So you take $60,000 a year for the rest of your life, or maybe for the rest of both of your lives, or just take this $1 million and go away in the form of an IRA. It's pre-tax money. And so Guy says his wife has a pension, and in this case, I guess it's with UPS, and he wants to know, do you take the pension or do you take the lump sum? Because his point on the pension was, and I'm just going to make these numbers up, if I get the $60,000 a year, my wife does, it's not going to increase with inflation. And we know the power of deteriorating buying power with inflation. Which one really makes sense for us is essentially the question. How do you help people navigate this?
Well, okay, a quick story comes to mind for a client who just died. And she retired in 2014. And we had this exact decision to make. 40-year employee from a major employer locally. And she could either take a pension or a lump sum. And she was unique in the fact that they also had another big 401k. So they had an account, big lump sum account. And then they had this decision about, do we take the pension or the rollover? And a lot of times in those cases, I see people do both. They've got their 401k, so they take a pension on the other option. In her case, I remember her telling me, and she was a decision maker in her family, and she said, I had a bout with cancer, so is my husband. if I take this pension and we die in the next few years, who gets my money? And so in her case, and I'm not saying this is right for everybody, but for her, the big deal was she wanted someone in her world to spend her money. And so went through the pros and cons. She decided to do the lump sum distribution of that pension, commingle it with her 401k. And I looked at it. She died 6 years later. And her husband, he's got cancer again. And so his health is not great. And it was this really kind of powerful moment for me where that client really understood her priorities. And for her, longevity wasn't her concern, which for a lot of people, the pension can be an awesome option if you think you're going to live a really long time. So I take it back to what are the priorities? And then it's not necessarily always a financial decision, in my opinion.
Yeah, in this case, they had to take in the facts on the ground, which was their longevity was impaired, both of them, because of the health issues. And that's where rules of thumb and generic what you should do don't work out so well.
Right.
Right. And Guy in his answer refers to David McWright. I believe he's the author of Power of Zero, which I'm familiar with, but I haven't read in depth. So I'm not going to comment on it, although I'm familiar with the concepts. But essentially, in retirement, you have 4 pots that you need to think about. And you talked about one of them, Tanya. You have your reserves, which is just the normal cash reserves. You have the floor, which is time segmented for the early years, the first 5 years. And then you have the upside, which is to help protect you against future shocks. That's where you need some growth. And then the last pot is longevity. How do I protect myself, my future self? And it sounds like in your case, Tanya, they knew the longevity layer wasn't near as important because of their situation.
Right.
And so you really do have to take this into context. And I can say in my practice, I've said, definitely take the pension as a payment. And I've said, definitely take the lump sum.
Agreed.
It really is no one right answer because there's so many things that have to come into play.
For the state plans, you really do need to take the pension. That's how it's built, because the lump sum would not be favorable at all. So some of it does come down to calculations, but if you're a traditional pension versus lump sum option, what I usually see is like a 12 to 13 years it takes for the pension to match what they'd give you on day one. So if it's in that traditional range, then it comes down to what your priorities are, this longevity and what you have built into those other pieces of the pie cake, as you said.
Yeah. And Guy, I know in your email, you got into some options of doing piecemeal Roth conversions if you did the lump sum. The best way to figure this out, and this is what we tried to create in the masterclass and we showed in the results webinar, is to build that framework. So when you're saying, well, what if I took the pension or what if I took the lump sum, that you can actually create that what if scenario and look at them side by side and see the impact to your fundedness ratio. That's going to get you 90% of the way there, feeling like you're making a decision with most of the facts in place. And then you factor in the stuff you talked about, Tanya, with the personal stuff and what your priorities are. So Tanya, how's things at Align Financial? Good?
Fantastic. 2021's off to a great start.
Great. I can't wait to come visit you up in Duluth. And we're going to see you next week on the show too, right?
I look forward to it.
All righty. Now let's go set a smart sprint.
On your marks, get set.
And we're off to set a little baby step we can take in the next 7 days to start this journey to being healthy in retirement. In the next 7 days, it's real simple. I'm going to challenge you to go buy the book Younger Next Year. They have a ladies version. They have the standard version. You're going to have a study guide that we created in 6-Shot Saturday, assuming you're getting our emails. And it's an important book. It's not going to be all end all, but it's an important book to help you focus on why this is such an important job for you. A reminder, in our 6-Shot Saturday, we are running our annual listener survey. So if you would like to give us some feedback on what you like, what you don't like, and what you'd like to see, please click on the link in 6-Shot Saturday because we read it and listen because the show's about you. Hope you have a great week. Hey, it's time for that all-important disclaimer. We so appreciate you listening to the show and love your questions and love the teaching that we're able to provide here. And actually, it helps us too. But remember, you're not our clients.
Not love it if you took advice from us on the show.
We would not love it if you took advice from us on the show. Realize this is helpful in education. Talk to your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before you make any decisions.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.